Okay, let's see if we're going live. It says we're live on the YouTube thing. Let's make sure our audio works. I'm so paranoid about that. And we have audio. Right, so what we have here is one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. Well, several of them. This is a 40-year-old 4-channel industrial timer. I think they were commissioned by Yle, the Finnish radio entity back in the 70s, 80s. And they used these to power TV transmitters back in the days when the TV transmitters they went dark at night because they just chewed up so much power it didn't make sense to run them 24/7. Of course, they don't use these anymore. I snatched them up when I got the chance, and I've basically restored them. I have 2 of these. I'm using them for various things around the house. This is a much cheaper thing. This is a Bieltimer remote socket, article number 44-1881018, 44-0118. And these are some of the best remote sockets you can get your hands on. And since I realized that, I've basically just vacuumed up as many of these as I can. I probably have 20 of these in use around the house. And the reason these guys are so good is because they actually have a proper radio chip in them. Yeah, they're actually crystal controlled. You can see the crystal right there. And that's very uncommon in these remote outlet type things. They tend to always just have some kind of RC oscillator, which has a little trim potentiometer, which always goes out of whack with time, and then you have to open it up and retrim it, or you'll just stand there clicking the remote 20 times before it actually works. So these are actually great, and they have a very good range. These will reach from anywhere in my house to anywhere in my house. But they don't come in any package other than just remote socket. You get 2 thirtables in, 2 thirtables out, and that's it. There are no compatible products for this remote, which would allow any other interfacing to these. These remotes are also very good. I think they're crystal controlled as well, and they have the separate on and off buttons, which isn't a given on these remotes. Some just have a single row of buttons which are on off, and with those you don't know if you're turning a thing on or off. You just keep clicking and it hopefully changes state every time you click. Whereas with these, if it doesn't turn off, you just keep pressing off until it does, which is very good for, slightly more critical applications. So obviously what we're about to do here is combine these 2 things. Because this timer lives in the battery room, and in the battery room I have my heat pump. And my heat pump has a remote input, which allows me to just turn the temperature in the house down whenever that external input is triggered. It's a relay input, so you just short 2 wires coming out of the pump together, and it will either turn on or off, depending on how you've configured it. And for a while now, I've been running this timer for that. It's got a schedule, and every day it'll just turn a relay on, and the heat pump will be off during the day when the energy prices are crazy. And in the evening, when, like at 1 in the morning, when the energy prices quite reliably come down to a more sane level, it'll click the relay off, the heat pump will go on, set to like 1,000,000 degrees Celsius, heat the house up, and then it will turn off again in the morning when the energy prices go up. However, the energy prices, I've been following them along quite thoroughly, just with my own eyes, and there are some days, like today, where the energy prices have just been pretty okay all throughout the day. So on those days, I've just been running down into the basement, manually clicking that switch, and then running up again, hopefully remembering to turn it back on in the evening. So what I want to do is just take one of these and essentially put it in series with the relay output in the timer, so that we can essentially just disable this timer on the click of a button from anywhere in the house. It should be a fairly simple task, and there are a couple of ways we can go about this. The easiest, which is what I kind of started doing before we started the stream, is to just remove a relay, take another relay, or mount this off board, and just pull a couple of wires out. You use the power supply that's already on this board, and you plug it into a separate outlet, and Bob's your uncle, there you go. You have your relay output controlled by a remote, which is not tied to the mains. So you can see we have the two fat mains wires there, which should go through a relay, making this switch the outlet on the top. But the issue with doing that is the power supply in these, well, they're not the worst. They are still just a capacitive dropper. And that means these have a terrible power factor, and they use about a watt when they're sitting around, regardless of whether or not the relay is drawn. And, you know, this thing already has a power supply in it. It's a transformer-based thing. It's nice and isolated. There's not much point in having a separate power supply just to power the radio module. So I want to see if we can figure out how this thing works, and figure out how to adapt it to the power supply in this thing. Generally, we don't use all the relays at once in this, so this thing has a fair bit of grunt in the power supply, which would easily power this board. There's no problem there. It's just a question of adapting the voltages we get out of a transformer in this thing to whatever this thing wants. And I think we're just going to get started. So I actually know that we have roughly 12 volts-ish unregulated available in this, so we actually shouldn't start with the timer, since that's a fairly predictable thing. We should start by seeing what kinds of voltages we actually need inside. Man, this is a wire. We should see what voltages we actually need inside the radio module. And people are showing up in chat. Mohammed Williams says, hello, bro. Hello, Mohammed. Or is it William? I don't know. So let's just plug this into this 230 volt lead. Now, we actually have, since quite recently, acquired an upgrade to the workshop, and that's an isolation transformer. So I'm happy to report that finally, after like a decade of doing this, we are no longer risking our lives by poking around straight on 230 volts, the reference to ground, which my feet are hooked to. So let's just turn on the transformer, and I hope the microphone will pick this up. And the breaker flipped. Let's try that again. And the breaker flipped. There we go. Here's a big chonking power transformer. 2 kVA. 2 phase to 1 phase. So I have a little control under the table where I can turn the outlet this is hooked to on and off. So I can hook that up and turn it on. And I need to actually turn that on as well. There we go. So these boards, they're slightly annoying when you first power them on, because for 30 seconds they go into programming mode. So if I were to press any button on this remote right now, it would program that code for it. So we need to wait for it to quit blinking its LED before we can actually use it. But that's kind of irrelevant, because what we're really looking for is the supply voltages. And we have a couple of capacitors here. Let's zoom you guys out so we can get a bit of a better look. Where's it? That's probably a decent place to work. So we have this capacitor here. That's a 16 volt, 220 microfarad, and then we have a couple smaller ones, and we have this 50 volts 220. So I imagine the relay in these, it's a 24 volt. You can see SMIH 24 VDC, a 24 volt DC relay. So we probably have a pretty unregulated 24-ish volt supply in this capacitor, and some kind of roughly 5-ish volts in this, and I have no idea what the small guy is for. I haven't really even looked at the schematic for this thing. Try to reverse engineer it, so we'll have a look. We have the big capacitor there going across there to a fuse. That would be a fuse, which then goes to two diodes, which go to the big capacitor here. So the blue cap is indeed the basic unregulated rail. So that's, I'm going to say, since we don't have a relay installed, we're not going to see what it's actually going to be under load, but I'm going to wager it's going to be something like maybe 35, 40 volts unloaded. Let's have a poke around. I need to clamp this in place so it doesn't go flying. There we go. Man, I wish they made multimeters with anti-glare coating. So this is going to be the big cap. Ah, that's better regulated than I thought, 25 volts. Okay, so it's going to be dropping down a bit when it actually turns on the relay, which is fine. It also does have, I think, a TR431 on the other side of the board. You can see it's this component right here where it's been running extremely hot and discoloring the board. Rob G is in the chat. Morning, stream to fall asleep to, maybe. Maybe. Hopefully I'm not that boring. So let's see what the smaller capacitor has. So we have a 25 volts there. We kind of need to rebuild this thing to work on 12 volts. So it's going to be right next to the crystal. It's probably actually easier to just probe it from the top, since we can see the leads. This is just kind of folded over. And as I suspected, 5 volts there. So that's going to be our logic supply. Probably the TL431 there, or similar devices are going to be regulating the 5 volt supply, so we get an integrated 5 volt regulator. I wonder if this thing isn't just going to work straight off the bat if we just plug 12 volts DC over this big cap. So we'll solder a couple of leads on that and see if we can just power it off of the bench power supply. If I can find a suitable soldering tip, that is. We don't need a big chonker. Oh man, I'm almost out of soldering water, but we have a couple of drops left. Just enough to get us by. So we have a negative of a capacitor towards that direction there. Oh, we have a test point there to solder to, so we don't even need to solder straight onto the cap. That's nice. That's a negative. This is going to be our positive. like so. Let's get a couple of leads on there. Do we have any reasonable, used, terrible leads? Computer fan monitoring wire. I don't understand how my brain can just look at some random piece of yellow wire on my desk and go, ah yes, that one came from a fan I used for that thing which didn't need monitoring. I'm still enjoying these new cutters so much. If you weren't tuning in the last time, I was basically just having a nerdgasm over these Pier Giacomi Italian side cutters. They are absolutely beautiful. They're the same model I've been using for many years, the TR25 or TR30, but I got some new ones for the first time in almost 10 years, and it's just moving from, you know, decade-old side cutters which have been around the block as the only set of side cutters in the workshop, and then going to some new ones. It's just it's orgasmic. Damax says, I bet it's going to work on 12 volts. Yeah, I think it's going to do that too. So place your bets. We're just going to solder on the wires, and then we're going to test it. So once we get it wired up into the timer already has physical relay outputs. So I don't want to have any relay in this thing. I just want to perhaps intercept the relay signal to the already extant relays, so that we don't need to have like an extra relay drawn all the time while we're running this thing, because that would just be wasted power and unnecessary. So let's turn on the lab pen. Oh crap! I forgot to turn on. I forgot to turn on 50% of the cameras. Hey, there we go. For once, it's not like something being broken. I just forgot to turn it on. There we go. Now you can actually see what I'm doing. Rob G says, I must order some next time I order from TME. Currently using chewed up Lidl cutters. Do not underestimate Lidl tools. Some of my absolutely favorite tools come from Lidl. Like do I have any at hand? No, they're all in important places because I keep using them. I have some like tiny tool sets from Lidl, similar to this one, which is also from Lidl, but this one is not very good. Don't buy this. If you see it, it's super plasticky. But like the previous generation of this is absolutely gorgeous. I've had them for over 10 years, and they're just beautiful. Absolutely perfect. Haven't broken a single bit, haven't lost a single bit. Nothing's falling apart. They're just great. And many of those, like, not the cheapest tools on Lidl, but the kind of cheap ones are just beautiful. Do not underestimate them. Rob G also asks, did you get my email? I haven't checked my email today, so I do not know. Right, so negative, and that one. Let's see. We have 13 volts here, and we have a blinking LED. So as expected, this is just gonna work right out of the box. Let's turn it down to close to 11.8. Now the LED is still lighting up nice and bright. I imagine we still have exactly 5 volts here. Yep, because that's regulated. So this, I think this is coded for C. Let's see. This was coded for anything at all. Okay, we'll have to just reset it and program it. C. There we go. So normally this would just go click and the relay would click, but I've already removed the relay. So that's that's beautiful. That's really simple. We don't need anything more advanced than that at all. Sarkybugger's in the chat. I cannot believe, Sarkybugger, how you keep having the patience to tune into all of this, but I do appreciate it. Good evening. So, that only leaves us the question of how this powers the relay. So let's have a bit of a prod around. I can turn off the oscillation transformer because we literally don't need that anymore. And it's loud and hummy and fan cooled. It's awesome, but it's loud. We don't need that anymore. Let's just clamp this in place. We can even clamp straight onto the PCB now that it's not running a bunch of high voltages which are going to go bang. Even if you're using an isolation transformer, 230 volts is still 230 volts, and if you short something out with 230 volts in it, it's going to go bang. It's going to go very bang. So, yes. Relay power. But we have absolutely nothing there because it's off. Let's click it and see what happens. DC. Did it actually? It did the thing. And we get supply voltage across there if I manage to hold the probe properly. Open circuit. You can see how the bar meter on the multimeter is just jumping around. That's supply voltage. And we should note the polarity. We have positive upwards, which does coincide with the direction of the debound diode. Well, debound diode, anti-EMF diode, anti-sparking diode. I'm not even sure what the proper technical term for that is. But that would be... No, shut up. That would be positive. That would be negative. So we can basically just remove this from the plug now. I don't think we're going to want the actual case for this, but you know, let's start by taking the timer apart and seeing how the logistics of actually installing this is going to go. Because I'm not entirely sure how much space we have. These things are relatively packed already, and you'll soon see why. Spoiler alert, it has to do with the fact that this is a digital timer from the 70s or 80s. They're awesome inside, but not very space efficient. Sarkybugger says, trying to learn something, and you amuse me with your English sense of humour. Yes, sir, that would be a Finnish sense of humour. A Finnish or an internet citizen sense of humour. Now this is completely stuck. Out you come. Come on. This is not how it's supposed to go. There we go. There we go. So this is the actual timer. It's a Japanese unit. It's absolutely beautiful. You can see all the Japanese writing there. And you can see where they have decided that The Japanese timer was not accurate enough, so the Finnish engineers who just assembled the rest of these, they drilled a hole and put in a time adjustment there, so I can actually trim the speed of a crystal with that capacitor trimmer. It's obviously not factory since it's just drilled straight through this nice graphic that the Japanese put a lot of effort into. That's how all of these old Finnish things are. They just go, we want something very accurate. The Japanese one is good, but it's not good enough for Suomi. Suomi, drill hole, make timer more accurate. Kyllä. And then we have a really accurate timer that doesn't drift in 40 years. So, actually wiring this up is gonna be somewhat interesting, because the timer has a bunch of open collector outputs. You can see how pointy thing. You can see the graphics here. How we have these are pins on the connector, these little round thingies. We have a transistor going to a common, which is that pin. So each of these outputs, they just pull any of these pins to ground. So we need to essentially put our timer in series with that somehow. That's gonna be reasonably easy, I think, depending on how this is referenced internally. Because if this also pulls to ground, it's probably just going to be a question of putting this in series with the relays, so that we essentially get this thing just being another transistor in series with this. But it needs to be referenced to ground. In that case, we actually need to have a closer look at this and see on which side of the supply that the transistor is on. And we want the transistor to be on the negative side of a relay, because if it's on the positive, I want to say that it's probably not going to work as easily as I'd like, but let's just take it under the microscope and have a bit of a look. Okay, so these are the relay pins, and you can see the diode there. And this is the negative side, and it does look as if we have a transistor there. And this transistor goes somewhere. This microscope camera is still just as bad as it always has been. Positive side of the relay seems to go straight to the positive rail, because this is the wire we soldered in. So this is our positive rail going there and straight to the relay. So this is what we want to see. This makes me happy. This means that we can just put this in series with the timer. Literally just snip a lead, insert this in series. We can actually just solder wires straight into the relay solder points, and it's just going to work. So that it should, at least. I'm not entirely sure where this transistor is actually connecting to. I would imagine that so this is our negative trace, the other wire we soldered in. I would imagine negative goes there, goes there, goes there, underneath there, and then in this mess of flux, this trace is actually going to connect to the transistor. So let's verify that that leg of the transistor actually connects to our negative rail there, because then we're going to know for sure, but this is just plain old negative side switching with no funny business going on. And we want to put that into beep mode. And that's exactly what we wanted to hear. Negative side switching. Super simple. Absolutely super simple. So now we have our supply there. Let's get some better wires for that. Oh, what's this? Is this? Ah, it's a better wire just appearing on the desk. How fortunate. And by the way, Doggo, if you're watching this, I know I didn't tell you about this stream. Sorry, wanted to let you work in peace. Just for one day. So this is going to be our power supply wire. We actually have nice labels here. We have 12 volts and I'm not entirely sure which one of these is ground. This one says it's ground, but it doesn't seem to actually go anywhere. So we're going to have to probe around there a bit, but that'll be done in a jiffy. We can also, before we start soldering to this, we can just desolder this from the board. Or yeah, let's just desolder it actually. I could snip the leads, but in case I ever want to put a board back in this, it'll be handy to just have the leads there. Let's see if this absolutely undersized soldering iron tip can take on this absolutely massive, chunky solder mass. Oh, I am so going to burn my fingers doing this. Ouch. Yes, I am. This is not proper soldering technique. No, it's there we go. That's the switched output lead gone, and this is going to be live in or live or neutral, since these are going into European sockets which are not polarized. So this is just one end of 230 volts input that we're desoldering right now. Slowly desoldering because I'm just too lazy to put the proper size tip on this soldering iron. Come on. Melty. Let's turn the top to like fire. Melting over, there we go. Another lead off. Let's not splatter solder everywhere. This one's not going to be as bad. There we go. So it's 1-3 PCB. Actually, I haven't even thought about how these switches are wired up. We could just hook onto these maybe, and then we'll actually perhaps even get the LED function. This is a bit curious. The timer actually. This is interesting. I completely forgot about manual overrides on this. So let's see. We have all these wires going how is this wired up? We have pink. Pink is easy to follow it. That's going to be one of the outputs, probably. So we have, now we have several pinks. So we have, which pink goes where? Okay, so pink from the timer goes to this switch, and then the output of the switch goes to the LED. Then we have another pink going out to what? What? Okay, this looks absolutely absurd. I think they're pulling all the relay current through the LED. Okay, we need to get rid of this script and actually have a look at how this is wired up. That's something. Rob Key says, oh shit, I remember this unit now. Yeah, it's not the first time these timers have been on the channel. I might have been doing something to one of them at some point. The Finns do the same with other people's guns, referring to just taking things and making them better. Okay, I have no idea what that means, but I'm sure Finns have done that at some point. Author Thing asks, do any of your high voltage power systems use 2 live wires like the 240/277 volt systems in the States? In general, no, because we use 3-phase instead, since that's just way more flexible, since you can just drive 3-phase motors straight from that. But there's nothing preventing you from grabbing 2 phases from a 3-phase outlet and using a single 400 volt phase for something. Actually, the isolation transformer you heard before, that thing, that actually runs off of 2 phases. It runs on single phase 400 volts, and it's a step down to 230. So yes, those things technically exist, but no one ever uses them because we just use 3-phase instead. 2-phase here, it's frowned upon because you would only use that for higher power applications. And since everything leading up to your facility is going to be 3-phase, using a 2-phase thing is inherently going to provide an unbalanced load to the power grid transformer, which is just bad. So we just use 3-phase. Our VFDs, they're 3-phase rectified. Our motors, they're 3-phase. We only use 3-phase or single phase in practice. The stream's current bitrate 0 is lower than the recommended bitrate. We recommend that you use an audio stream bitrate of at least 128 kilobits. Right. Well, thank you, YouTube. That's a beautiful lie because I quite obviously have audio. Anyway, we were investigating how the actual relay drive is done in this magical black box. We should also remember this black thing is two 18650s, which are the backup power for this whole thing. So this is actually kind of energized right now. And if we short too many things, there's going to be, you know, sparks flying. So we were following the pink wire, and pink wire open collector output number 1 goes straight into the switch. When it turns into purple on the output of the switch, the middle pin on this switch is always output, so it switches between the outer contacts. So it then goes to the LED, into the LED, and then it goes in the other pink wire, this pink wire, down to the board, and right there, it goes straight to the relay. So all the current to the relays is going through this LED. The other end of the switch, that's just going straight to ground. I can guarantee it, because it's going to be a black wire going to the timer and black wire going to there. So we're going to have our plus 12 volt black ground there, and we can basically just hook onto this stuff here to control the relay. But that's ridiculous. I had no idea they were running all the relay current through the LED. That's completely fine to do, because these relays, they use like 30, 40 milliamps. And these are LEDs from, the 70s. They need that current to actually light up. Now that's actually a really good solution in a way, because the LED will only light up if there's actually current going through the relay. So if you have a relay that has a failed coil in it, and you try to turn the 8-bit on, the LED is not going to light. So we actually have a really good monitor for if the relay is actually there, right on the front panel. That's actually really clever. And that's exactly the sort of thing you find in all these old Finnish, like military issue or government issue things. It's beautiful. I love this sort of thing. So let's grab some. Actually, let's grab some more color-coded wires for this. I actually have this really bad ATX loom in the trash, which we can steal some wires from. This is from a terrible power supply, and it's actually CCA. So I was just going to throw it away, but CCA is fine for this application. You're dealing with a really bad PC power supply if you have bloody CCA wires in it. And if you've never heard about CCA wire, that stands for copper-coated aluminium. They just take an aluminium wire, which, it's cheaper and worse than a copper wire, and to make it solderable, they use some process to just put a very thin layer of copper onto the wire, so you get a wire that is copper colored. It looks as if it's copper, but it's actually aluminium, with all the downside that entails. The only upside is that it's cheaper, but it's less mechanically sturdy, it's less conductive. It's just not a good way of making wires. Oh wait, my white balance is completely screwed. This is a red wire, not an orange one. Oh well. What's the chat say? That was a nice sound. Big HP programmable power supply I acquired for the Edinburgh Hack Lab when I was living there made that sound when switched on. Yeah, big transformers, they do sound good. Ah, these side cutters. These snips, they are a joy to use. And here you can see the CCA wire. It's difficult to really see it. And maybe we can actually see it if we zoom down super far. You can kind of make out the aluminium. And if we really look close, manage to focus this. Where are we? Jesus, where the hell are we? So this is a copper-colored wire, but you can see copper tends to get smeared out when you cut it, so it usually covers up the aluminium. But on some of these leads, you can see there's like a white tip, and that's just the aluminium shining through. The easiest way to tell if you have a CCA wire is to just try and bend it, because it's much springier than copper. Copper likes to kind of maintain its shape when you bend it. CCA, it just behaves differently. It's a bit difficult to explain, but once you've dealt with a few CCA wires, you'll get the hang of it. So I'm not entirely sure where we're going to be able to mount this board. I've kind of wanted to take the battery and make it external, just because I don't like having to take the entire thing apart to change the batteries. They're not they don't have a trickle charge or anything. And then we could just put a board there, put an external jack for a battery. Maybe we'll just do that. Because we're not going to be able to fit anything down here. That's just a non-starter because the timer is so big and deep. And really, this entire area here underneath the switches, that's just no space for anything except for what we're already using for the battery. So to do this modification, we either need to put the board externally, or we need to put the battery externally. And I have a preference for putting the battery externally because I need to take that out and charge sometimes anyway. So I think we're going to go on a wild goose chase for like a large drill. And let's plug the timer in so we can disconnect the battery. These timers, they're a bit peculiar to program. So you do, once you've programmed them, you don't want to lose your programming. We only need a drill that's big enough to fit a 9-volt battery connector through. So we only need to fit this through out the side. This used to obviously use 9-volt batteries, but they use, being TTL logic from the 70s basically, but they just drain them in no time. There's no point trying to use anything normally, any like normal 9-volt battery. You just burn through them at no time at all. So I don't feel like making this more difficult than it needs to be. We'll just take a hole right where the plug is. Maybe we should we do it in the corner? And we should actually do it. This was a difficult choice. We're gonna get most lead length if we do it like that-ish. It has been settled. This is not a good drill. Actually, let's turn off the microphone while we do this. There we go. That was a chore. This box is apparently extremely thick. Like, it's 5mm thick plastic. I am not joking. The Finns did not want this timer to break. It'll survive a nuclear war. Like, really, let's just... Do I have a set of calipers? The thickness of this It's a thick boy. A very thick boy. Yeah. 4 millimeters. Focus. 4 millimeters thick plastic. You don't get that nowadays. Now this plastic is just going to go everywhere. Gah. Oh god, it really is everywhere. Life is pain. Ah, the plastic is going everywhere. Literally everywhere. I'm going to be eating this for weeks. No, is that big enough to poke this through? With force or without force? That is just not doing the thing. Which is bad, because that's the biggest drill I have at hand. So I have to run downstairs and fetch one of those cheaty pyramid-shaped electrician's drills. I think I know where the single one I own is. So you get to enjoy stair walking adventure sounds. It should be in the battery room somewhere. I know where I last saw it, but it might have grown wings and flown away to places unknown. It is not where I last saw it, which is not good. Now, where the hell is my cheaty electrician's drill? It should be here. It really is not here. Definitely is not here. Well then. That's a problem. See, the thing about the cheat electrician's drills is that they're super expensive, so I've literally only ever purchased one. So the other option is going to be to just... Oh, hey, I found it. I found it. Good. Never mind, we don't need other options. Cheaty electrician's drill acquired. Okay. Let's just make a proper sized hole. Maybe like that. Ta-da! Beautiful. Oh no, why is that going beep? That should not be going beep. Why did the timer just go beep? Did I short something? I don't see how I would have. It must have just accidentally pressed some button. Okay, so that's our new battery thing. I can't be bothered with a strain relief for that. It's not going to see much use. So now we can actually just reconnect the battery and disconnect it from mains, so that we don't accidentally short something out and don't accidentally lose any time. Okay. We actually need to plug it back in so we can see what kind of supply voltage we actually have available. I just want to know. And once we've figured our supply voltage out... Oh, quit beeping at me! Shh! Be quiet. Once we've figured our supply voltage out, we can just word it up. So there should be... Yeah, that's our so-called 12 volts. But it's... well, let's just double check that the polarity is right. Yes, is the one total GND? It actually has GND. And that is something weird. Six, 3, 5, 6, something. Well, we'll just wire it up on the points where we actually have other leads wired. I was probing around with one actually labeled GND, and it seems to be the same as the black one, but I'm not sure. There's like some modifications on the underside of the board, which I don't feel like trying to figure out. So let's unplug this again. We don't need to be soldering on something that's powered on. It's always a pleasant surprise when you're soldering something and it starts doing something while you're soldering. It's an exciting time. So we'll actually use nice, probably colored leads for this, because why not? We can. Let's get rid of a terrible lead-free solder from here as well. It's just not fun to work with. I said let's get rid of it. There we go. Most of it anyway. I don't want the capacitor to fall off. So we have a negative there. Let's just zoom you guys down a bit again. That's better. Put some nice, fresh leaded solder on there. Big chunk. And negative in this direction. Should we maybe take the wires in that direction so we don't make the board any larger than it needs to be? That seems like a good idea. Yeah, and I did not tin that properly. There we go. That's our negative lead soldered. And our positive. And I already did tin the PCB. So that just goes on there. Come on, melty. Melty, melty. I think that's fine. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, that's fine. Not a perfectly beautiful job, but it's good enough. This thing does not see any mechanical stress anyway. So we want to fit this in. Let's get rid of this battery holder. We don't need that anymore. And it's not very well suited for mounting a... Well, maybe we can actually just repurpose this for mounting a PCB. I think I want to cut it like there and like there. And we'll just bend it into some suitable shape. It's just my installation wire. Like so-ish. We can just kind of place that on there and bend it in place. Put a bit of glue against the side and it's going to be absolutely fine. Crush that down a bit more so we don't have any extra unnecessary height. I think that's going to be good. So we still need a couple of leads for the output. So that's a minor detail. So we're going to be wiring onto the the pink wire. I think we're gonna... This is going to be a bit off camera because I can't be bothered reframing. We'll just snip another zip tie and bring the pink wire. I'm going to write that on the board even so we don't forget where it goes. Oh, quit beeping at me! Quit beeping at me. I'm just going to write pink. And we'll desolder the pink wire and route that straight to the timer instead. Timer, remote control. So the pink wire is coming from the timer and it's going to the relay controlling channel 1. And channel 1 is the channel we're trying to remote control. So this is going through a transistor to ground. So this will be open circuit when the timer is not triggering the channel, and it will be ground when the channel is being triggered. And what we want to do is just put this in series with that, so that we can defeat the timer, prevent it from triggering channels when we press the remote control. So we're going to need one more lead for this. Do we have a pink lead? Hey, would you look at that? We have a pink lead on the same terrible ATX loom. So we'll just grab the pink lead. Is that not beautiful? It's even the same hue. So let's strip these power supply wires. We'll have that out of the way, because that's easier to do before we start attaching this to the rest of the timer. And I wonder if maybe the best way of mounting this might be to just kind of tack it on there with like that orientation. Maybe we can get rid of this. We can get rid of a big dropper capacitor. We don't need that anymore, just to make this a bit smaller, because space actually is an issue inside this case, due to the giant timer module just hogging all the room. Dropper capacitor done. That's a spare part. This fuse is on the 230 volt side, so we don't need that either. Come on. Come on. Melty, melty. Please do the melty. Do the melty. Thank you. It didn't do all the melty I wanted, but some of it. So we can get rid of that. We don't really need the LED either. At least not like this. Ah, crap, it's underneath those wires. That's annoying. I actually want to get rid of the LED, so we'll just bend everything aside. I don't want to like get rid of the LED. We're going to put it back since it has useful flashing, but I want to make it shorter so it takes up less space. Okay, out you come. A positive towards the capacitor, negative away from the capacitor. Positive towards the capacitor. We'll just put that right down on the board. Wait, there are markings on the board which indicate the polarity of the LED, which don't seem to be the same as what I just figured out. Let's see. So we have a negative on capacitor there, on the negative wire. Now that goes straight to, yeah, I got that wrong. The negative of the LED definitely goes towards the capacitor, since that end goes straight to negative. So we can never have a voltage that's more negative than that. So the markings on the board are correct, and I was wrong. There we go. We'll just solder that in place. Right, solder the right pin, please. There we go. And now I get to use my beautiful Reengineering TR20 SM with a tiny, beautiful little nibbling ends to just reach right in there between the cables and... oh, beautiful. Life is so much easier when you have a right tool for the job. So I don't think we can make this much smaller reasonably. Like it's really thin up here. That's just what we want. So we can slip it in here. And I'm actually gonna get rid of this mess. Which that might actually desolder the negative battery connector if I try to desolder it. So we're just gonna snip these, and we'll take some double-sided tape to mount the board. Out you come. I have no idea what that trash is, but you don't need it. Oh, it's just plastic that's now everywhere. So this board can now rather easily go like so. That's going to be beautiful. So we'll solder our leads in the correct orientation. So let's see, this is going towards ground. So this is going to go to the positive end of a relay because we want it to be in series. We marked that out there. So that goes in there. This is not precarious at all. This is perfectly proper board mounting procedure. Perfectly proper board mounting procedure. Am I gonna have to clamp this in place? Let's give it one more go. No, okay, fine. I'll bring the third hand. I'll bring the third hand. It's so difficult to do things properly, jeez. There we go. Okay, now it's not going to go flying. And it went flying anyway. It's so difficult to find holes, you know. And I did not manage to solder that properly. Please stay in place. There we go. Beautiful. So now we have this going up to the timer, which then goes on to ground when the output is triggered. Now hang on, how is this gonna work out? Yes, because this connects... this is gonna go to ground when it's on. And I don't think we actually need the other lead. Let's see, how is... am I being an idiot? Is this not going to work out? Because this is... I think I might be being an idiot trying to wire this up now. because this is powered, we have a return path to ground there, and there's going to be 12 volts coming from the relay, which goes... How is this actually going to work out? This suddenly turned into an IQ test. I'm not sure I've been thinking about this the right way. So this actually connects straight to ground. This does the same thing as the timer does. And this has its own ground. It's not floating. So this can only actually go in parallel with the timer, since the only thing this board can do in its current configuration is also connect this particular pin we just soldered onto to ground. So this is not achieving what I want to achieve, since I now have a possibility to turn the relay on with the remote, but I can't actually turn the relay off with the remote, which is what I want to do. Someone in chat is saying, don't be afraid to doodle with the schematics, sometimes you just have to avoid brain melt. Yes, I'm a very visual thinker, so I tend to like have a schematic going in there, and it's just more work to actually put it together on paper. That's the danger in doing this live on camera, because this is the part where I just sit going for like half an hour. So we would actually have to have this in series with ground going to the timer, which we cannot do because ground on the timer is a power supply for the whole thing. There's going to be a moment of dead air while I think about this. I apologize. Are we actually going to have to use separate relay or optocoupler for this? An optocoupler would be an option, but then we run into the issue that we're actually trying to break like 30 milliamps, and most optocouplers are not happy to work at such a high current. It would just burn out. Yeah, since man, this just got really tricky. Is it? It's not actually an acceptable solution to have it in parallel with the timer, because I want to be able to turn the timer off. I don't want to be able to turn it on. Actually, I can solve this. Or can I? If I invert the schedule on the timer so that the relay is off when the output, when I want to trigger the input on the device it's controlling, then I can achieve the same result by just turning the relay on, and that would actually work. Thankfully, this timer has switching outputs, so I can either have a normally open or normally closed connection to the output thing. So I have like an integrated inverter for the output. So actually, it is acceptable to have this just in parallel with the output, and that's really the only sensible way of doing this right now. So we need to just take our other pink wire and solder it actually on the same in the same hole as the first pink wire, because there's been a change of plans. The timer is going in parallel with the radio module, and we are going to just redo the scheduling to accommodate that. That's no big deal. That's fine. So the original plan I had was to allow the timer to be in series with a relay coil and be able to turn it off. And that's just not possible without having a galvanically isolated output on this. I would need to put the relay back on the timer. I don't think we have space for that, and it's a kind of ugly solution. So instead we're just modifying the schedule in the device, which is really no big deal. It's a compromise. Good thing I caught onto that before we went any further, though. It would have been an annoying brain fart to notice once everything is done. It wouldn't have been a huge deal, but it's best to get it right the first time. There's that soldered. And this end will now run off to the negative end of the relay. Since these outputs are all open collector, the way the control inside this thing works is I do not need that much wire. We can just cut this like that. The way this control works is by just grounding whichever pin you want to control, whichever. Oh, I'm rambling. Never mind. So we kind of want to evacuate the hole for the relay. This is channel 1 there, one which has no lead soldered, so we'll just slurp that up. We just solder that. Watch me just melt this entire loom while I try to get the desoldering iron there. Quit beeping. This is so good. I wish I had someone to hold these wires. Doggo, help me. Doggo, help me. Okay. So that's an evacuated hole. And now we can just take our pink thing and put it in the hole. Like so. It's very important to get the pink thing in the hole, and then make sure you get the appropriate amounts of fluid into the hole so the pink thing sticks in the hole. Anyone who gets that joke, God, you're a degenerate. Okay. Beautiful. So we should now, as long as we install this board and solder it to power, be able to control an output with our little radio controller. And part of me really wants to... Oh, shut up! Quit beeping at me. Part of me really wants to redo these wires now, because since we are taping this to the side there, having these on the underside is not going to be good. So I think we can the pay-to-play impedance of this thing has always been garbage. I don't think we actually need this capacitor because we're just like a few centimeters of trace away from this big capacitor there. So I think it's actually safe to get rid of a blue cap and go with no cap on the actual board. Negative, positive. And by getting rid of a capacitor, we can recycle the mating holes for the capacitor to put our wires into, and then get not nicely mated wires. I'll just get rid of all these. And we'll these guys. Yonekon says €70 electricity bill, normally €20. I have electric heating. You don't want to know what mine is. It's been an expensive winter, and these wires are of course way too thick now. They won't fit in those holes, but we have a fair bit of space, so I think we can just finger drill those out. I wish I knew where to get an actual quality finger drill. This thing is getting kind of terrible. The chuck is so dinky, but it just keeps slipping. There we go, that's one hole drilled up, and we'll drill the other hole. I hope the microphone is picking up a horrible screeching noise this thing is making. There we go. Nice big holes. Rob G says, yeah, I was pondering my electricity bill while sitting in the sauna earlier. Yeah, sauna has become suddenly a very expensive hobby. So we want this board mounted in that direction, so we get the antenna at the bottom. So these leads are going to mount like so, kind of in that direction. I'm not sure, I'd like to mount it so the antenna is actually higher up, but I don't think I'm not sure if that's gonna fit properly. I think it's gonna fit. Yeah, I think the antenna's gonna fit, so we'll mount it with the antenna upwards. That just makes it a bit neater, since I don't need to run the leads across the entire board like that. Negative. That's not a beautiful solder joint, but oh well. And positive. Come on. In you go. In you go. You are not going in. Snip. Strip. And we'll solder that. There we go. All those flat. And let's just get some suitable double-sided tape. I just went on a tape shopping spree, so I actually have all kinds of proper tape for everything. It's amazing. It is nice. It's so nice to just go to a big like supply store with the sole intention in mind of buying like a bunch of glue or a bunch of tape and just going loose like a kid on the shelves. Just yes, give me all the things, all the nice things I want them. I may be weird for like feeling like a kid at Christmas for buying tape. Well, this guy is not going to just stick onto this for later use, so I guess we're going to use that. So we'll grab a decent chunk of this. Yeah. I'm going to wipe that with some isopropyl because that's just going to make it easier to actually adhere to. Make it nice and shiny. Get all the sticky but not adhesive flux off. Beautiful. Nice and clean. Tape goes on that. And the little extra bit that I'm just going to lose can go on some other high part of the board. Like so. Doesn't quite matter. I hope I've done all this right because it's going to be annoying. But you should test these things before gluing everything together, but oh well. Let's just YOLO it. I think I'm competent enough to solder like 3 wires in correct places. Let's see, the chat is saying things. Ken Phillips says, last time I saw a video of yours, didn't you have a borehole heat pump? I thought they were meant to be cheap to run. They are very cheap to run compared to direct acting electric heating. You know, you get 3 times-ish more heat for your kilowatt hours. So they are literally 1/3 the price under basically worst case conditions. And often afterwards 1/4 the price to run. But when the electricity prices are as high as they have been, that's still expensive. And I have a fairly large, fairly old house. It takes a fair bit of electricity to heat it, even if I keep most of this place cold. Like I only have like maybe 1/3 of the house heated, the rest of the rooms are just literally cold. The electricity prices are just so ridiculously high right now. You know, when you're paying, like if I have heating and everything set like now, I'm using about 40 to 45 kilowatt hours per day to heat the house, run all the tech, run the servers, all the stuff I do. That's 45 kilowatt hours per day. About 80 or 90% of that is heating. So if I was using a direct acting electric heating, I would be paying, you know, basically, well, I would be using like 150 kilowatt hours a day. So something absolutely ludicrous. And that would, like, with the worst electricity prices have been like 40 cents per kilowatt hour. You know, that's like 100 euros a day just to heat the house. That's insane. Like, that's completely unmanageable. I do not have that kind of money. And, oh fuck. I just disconnected the ground to the timer. I lost all the programs and all the time. Rip me. That's annoying to reprogram. Let's so this is the negative power supply lead for the radio module. Oh wow, you can only see my hand. There we go. Negative power supply lead there. And then we want the positive power supply lead going to plus 12 volts there. Maybe I can actually just evacuate that hole and mount it properly. Beautiful. That's proper and nice. Let's hold the wire down slightly while we're soldering it, because I can tell it just wants to go flying the second it gets wet by the solder. There we go. And we'll just fold those down, keep them in place. And I hope this double-sided tape is actually gonna do the thing. It feels a bit janky. It feels a bit janky. I kind of want to just double fold a bit and shove it in between there. So let's do exactly that. Or double stack two pieces. I think it's going to work better. We're doing it glue to glue. An unbreakable bond. Okay, double-sided tape sandwich. I'll just rip it off up slightly and poke it in there. There we go. That's a bit better. So that's our trigger wire. This is the one you want to cut if you want to stop the bomb going off, which goes to our relay board, which is an open collector output, which has its own ground there. So when we trigger this, it will pull this connector, or this lead, to ground, which will make the relay for channel 1 change state. It'll turn on. And the other pink lead, this one, goes all over the place. Goes to this LED, which goes to this switch, which then goes with this pink lead into the timer, which is also an open collector output, which will go to ground when the timer triggers. So we can now either trigger that relay with a timer, with a manual switch, or with a radio module, I think we're ready to test this out. So let's zoom out a bit. And I guess just plug it in, turn the power on, and see where the fire comes from. So we did lose our time since I accidentally desoldered the negative lead, which is annoying, but oh well. I don't think that thing actually blinked. Did it? Did it not? It didn't. So something is wrong. Why is our radio module not being powered? Is it going on fire? Let's look with a thermal. It's getting a little bit warm, 30 degrees. That's interesting. I have no idea why that would not work. Yeah. What's our power supply voltages? Are we just powering this backwards? Let's see. Negative to negative, positive to positive. We have 16 volts. That should be fine. Do we have 5 volts? We have 5 volts. Why is the radio module not doing its thing? I am one confused fox. Why did that not work? What have I broken? That worked absolutely fine before. I cannot imagine it would actually require the primary side capacitor that close. That's spooky. I knew. It's because I glued it down. It's because I glued it down. Had I not glued it down, it would be working perfectly right now. That's absurd. What's going on? Oh well, I guess we're ripping this out again. Let's hope we don't just split the board now. This is expensive tape. I knew it. Oh man. This tape does not want to give up its bounty. I have no idea why this is not working. This makes no sense. But we'll figure it out. I hope I haven't killed the radio module. Did I get the capacitor mounted the wrong way? No, negative should be. Yeah, that's a negative right there. does this actually require the capacitor to be there? That makes no sense. We have some LDO that would go unstable. Maybe. But we have 5 volts on the secondary. Why would this not work? I am flabbergasted. Jesus. Oh, K Wills just donated $10 US. Thank you very much, K Wills. Says, I'll help you keep Dame for half a day. Keep warm for half a day. Thank you. Very much appreciated. Wizard Tim says, I say double check which side of the LED has the anvil as you went on lead length. The LED is actually in backwards. The LED is in backwards. Ah, you caught it. The model is still not working, but the LED might be in series with something. Good catch. I was actually paying attention to which direction I put the LED. I must have just managed to flip it in my hand right when I put it in. Can you come out of there? Quit being annoying. Whereas my pliers are lost. These are absolutely the wrong pliers for the task, but you know, you make do. Grr. Let's mount the LED the right way around. Hopefully it's just like doing something important. Even if the LED was just not flashing, the modules should still have worked. We should have heard a relay click. So there's something up. Either I've wired something wrong, or there's the LED is just completely preventing the radio module from working. This LED does not want to go back. There we go. We have now rotated the LED anyway. So let's see if that makes a difference. Power on. Look at that. Now it's flashing. Is it going to work? It works, but it's not managing to actually click the relay. And we can't click the relay at all. So that's interesting. Why can we not click the relay? So now the module is at least doing something. What do we actually have on our output lead? SK says, hello FF and all in chat. Hello SK. Nice to see you. So we have nothing on the relay, which is strange. There should be 12 volts on the relay coil. So we have voltage there. We have voltage, like we have supply coming to the relay, positive supply, and it goes through the relay coil, and then it goes to the pink wire. But I see nothing coming to the actual radio module. Oh no, there we go. That is there. Is it going to work now? No. Why is it not managing to click the relay? Is there something really funky going on? Oh. Yes, there's something extremely funky going on. I've also soldered the pink wire to the wrong pin on the radio module. So we've just hard tied the pink wire to 12 volts. Hopefully we have not blown the transistor in the timer. We might have a dead channel on the timer now, but we'll see. So this should now actually allow us to click this with a switch on the front panel. Let's see. No. Interesting. Oh, we might have blown this LED actually. I think we probably blew this LED. Because we'll basically just put power supply of 17 volts right across this LED. Someone's probably going to go back in the stream and see how this thing shines up like the sun for half a second and then dies. So I'm going to wager we just have ridiculous voltage drop across a broken LED. Right now, we're going to have 17 volts across here. And look at that. So we killed an LED. I'm gonna have to see if I can find scrunch up another 5mm red LED. Hopefully I have one. I bought a bunch of like random LEDs not too long ago, so I should have something. Colored LEDs. Oh man. Oh man, these are modern LEDs. These are modern LEDs, which are going to be rated for like no current. I'm not sure how much current we actually need to pass to pull the relay, but let's give it a go. So that's on. If we just poke our probes across the broken LED, yeah, that works. That's almost 90 milliamps. That's not gonna go well for a modern LED. But just for the fun of it, here is a modern LED. Let's just see. We'll turn on another one. That's 90 milliamps through an 80s LED. This is going to be 90 milliamps through a modern LED. Prepare to just get completely blinded. I'm prepared to sacrifice this LED just for the demo. Oh, come on. That's a difference. Ha. But yeah, there's no way that's actually going to work. Damn it! That was annoying. That was a really stupid mistake to make. Craig Nering is in the chat. Long time no see. Hello, Craig. So we kind of just need to put this LED in there, and we need to put a resistor across it to pass the current. So I'm just going to do a quick calculation to figure out what we want to do. Can I maybe even show you? So we'll just bring Miscal out there, and we want to have a voltage of like 1.8 at a current of about that. So we want a 20-ish ohm resistor across this LED. 22 ohms, I'm sure that's fine. That leaves us a bit of current for the actual LED. So we'll just, how are these actually mounted? I have no idea how these LEDs actually go in this case. Are they glued? Are they screwed? Press fit? I think it might be a question of like walking this insert out. Oh, something happened. Something gave way. The ring came off. Pop. Okay. That didn't actually do as much good. Oh yeah, there we go. That's an LED out. This is not plugged in right now. So we can just... Is this LED... Wow, this LED, it's too old to have a chamfered side. Oh no, it actually isn't. It's just very unnoticeable. I'm going to grab a new LED which hasn't been abused. Just to be sure as well. It's a 22 ohm resistor. I will just poke it in there. $22 ohms. How much power do we actually get to the resistor? We get 150 milliwatts in the resistor. Jeez, that's quite that's quite a lot. Maybe we can step it down to 15 ohms. What do we get then? 90 milliamps over 15 ohms. No, we need our 22 ohms because else we're not going to have enough voltage available to actually drive the LED. So we'll just see what happens. So the pink wire is the positive. So we want to just like spread the legs on this a bit. Wrap the resistor on there. Something like that. And we'll pop that in. New LED. And we'll solder that in place. This is going to be interesting. This resistor might basically just go on fire. It is called a quarter-watt resistor, but you don't want to get close to that. Bit of fresh solder on both the leads as well. And positive in the pink one. Oh, dicks. I just made this unmountable, damn it. I forgot to put the ring. There's a little clamping ring. This guy just holds the LED in place, and I can't get that on as it stands because the leads are too separated. So we're going to have to try again, actually. Get yet another LED. That's just not going to work out. I need to get the ring around the LED before I spread the legs. I'll just grab another LED. Right, so we're mounting this first. Like so. Ring on there. This is a tight fit, as rings should be. Oh, snap. So that's actually mounted now. Now we can separate the legs and forget to grab the resistor. 22 ohms. And I kind of want to do 33 ohms, so let's compromise and do 27 ohms. Because I just don't want this resistor to go on fire. That would be with gold, I think. I think 27 would be a gold ring, and 2.7 would be a silver one. Oh, shut up. Let's just double check the resistance on this. 27 ohms. It's a balancing act about getting the LED to go a bit on fire and getting the resistor to go a bit on fire. You don't want one of them to go a lot on fire because that's not going to work. But if both of them just go slightly on fire, then we're fine. That's acceptable. Snip, snip. And we have, let's see, positive in. Oh, we have more legs to cut still. We need to cut the resistor legs, else it's just going to get annoying. I should use my TR30s for that. Here, yeah, call me TR30A with a lead holder. If you haven't seen it yet, this is magic. I just snip it, and it grabs the lead. Ah, pornographic. Okay, let's solder this again and do it right this time. Okay. Let's see if we have acceptable brightness and fire levels. That looks pretty okay. I mean, that's an ode to technology. That's like a couple milliamps. That's 90 milliamps. And even if we set the exposure down a bit, it's much more sensitive to the supply voltage. It's easily visible though. That's going to be like almost nothing. Now that works. I hope the resistor isn't going on fire. Nah, that's perfectly fine. I don't mind that at all. Good. So now we're back to where we started. We have a timer with no radio control. That's what, 2 hours of work to achieve exactly nothing, but I think we can get there. Let's have a look at the chat for a moment. Thomas V says, good night everybody, good luck with your timer, I'm guessing you went to bed. Clonoa asks, what will the timer be used for? This is for controlling my heat pump, heating for the entire house I'm in right now. It's been just doing the timer thing for a long time, but if you just joined, what we're doing is we're adding this radio module, which used to be one of these remote outlets type things, so that I can control the timer with one of these standard built-in remotes, which I have a lot of. These are just the ones within arm's length. So I want to be able to be like, check the energy prices, go, oh, I want heat, click. Or, oh, Jesus Christ, I don't want heat, click. So if we actually now unplug this and solder this lead to the correct pin on the radio module, we should be able to control this. What's caused the LED to break, the one we just replaced, was that I accidentally put this on the wrong pin. So we literally put supply voltage across this LED. Just 17 volts, all this like 4 VA transformer can do right across the LED. It went flash, probably, I didn't see it, and died horribly. But this time it should actually work. So now, yes, we're not going to blow it up when we do this, because like when in this circuit, since there used to be a relay here, this is a footprint for a 24-volt relay. In this side we have supply voltage, which we just don't want to use for anything right now. So this pin is always supply voltage, whatever you do. There's 12 volts there. But on this one, you have either open collector, like nothing connected at all, or you have ground. So it's completely different now, unless I'm being an idiot again, which we will soon find out. So that's off. Let's make this an overseeable mess, and the LED didn't go on fire straight away. We can click the relay now. Beautiful. But why? Actually, if... Huh. That's an interesting phenomenon. Why does the LED go out when I do that? Why? I have no idea why that's happening. There's going to be some super simple explanation to that. So if this is on, we ground that. Ah, yeah. This LED, the way it's wired up, it's not controlled by the voltage across the LED. It's not controlled by the voltage across the relay. It's controlled by the current going through the relay. So when the radio control is on, the current is going right now. When the radio control is enabled, the current is going from the positive power supply rail into this relay, through this trace, through the pink wire, to the module, and to ground here. There's no current actually flowing through this LED. But when we turn that off, now there's no circuit between the pink wire here and ground there. So now, since this is just completely invisible, it's nothing there, the current is instead going through the rest of the pink wire to the LED, through the switch, and then onto ground. That's really cool. I had not thought about that at all. It just blew my mind. Huh. Now the question is this good behavior or bad behavior? Is it a feature or a bug? The LED in the radio module is not going to be visible. And we're not going to be able to see, like if this is off, we can control this by without having an indication of the front panel of the state of the output. So there should be some way to solve this. There should be some easy way to solve this. I think we want the LED to light up whenever the output is lit up. So we always want the current to the relay to go through the LED. So that would mean that we want to hook the radio module to different parts of the circuit. I think we want to hook the radio module to there instead, because then we have the same functionality as the switch, and the switch will light the LED because it's passing current on this side of the LED. What we're doing now is passing current on this side of the LED, so we're just completely out of the entire front panel circuit. But if we connect the pink wire, let's see, if we reconnect this pink wire that goes from the LED to the relay, and we then take this pink wire and connect it to the middle pin of a switch or that end of the LED, then the LED should actually light whenever the output is on. So let's just turn this off and change it around that way. That was a mind blow. I did not see that coming. It's fairly obvious why it's happening, but when you're not prepared, it's exciting. So that pink lead goes away. These pink leads come off again. This is such a soldered together mess that I'm just gonna snip them. Snip them, strip them. And we'll evacuate the hole again without melting all the wires. No, almost hole in one that. Oh, come on, get in there. There we go. And it's out again. Come on. Come on, please stay in place. Like so. That's soldered in place. And now we want this one. We want to evacuate the whole radio module again. Oh no, it just didn't clog the hole up. We'll make sure we put it in the right hole this time. And we throw it away. Fine. Fine, we're putting it in the third hand again. When like twisting wires, you can easily notice when they're CCA rather than copper. And this is definitely a CCA wire. Here you go. There we go. And we're soldered, and we're definitely on the right track now because we are soldered to the side which has a transistor there. It's hard for you to see, but that's the transistor right there. Before we were soldered to supply voltage, which ruined our LED. We're not going to ruin our LED again. And this pink wire is kind of too short now. Oh, that's annoying, but we'll just deal with it, I think. We'll put some fresh solder. Now I wonder, I think it's better to actually solder it onto the LED than, oh no, now we're doing the switch. I don't like soldering to these switches because they tend to kind of melt and fall apart when you do. But that's the better option right now. I'm not even going to try poking it through the hole in the switch. That's just, there's no way that's happening. There we go. Okay, this should now give us the desired behavior. We should be able to remote control the relay with the radio module, and we should also be able to see the LED light when it's on through the radio module. Let's give it a go. The radio module is still turning on. The moment of truth. Ta-da! If that's not satisfying to see. And we still have manual control. And the timers. I mean, I don't think we would have broken the time, but let's program a program into this. Let's see if I remember how to do it. So it's at 0:40. Let's do it at 0:46. Channel 1, Sunday, 0046, and it would be RRS. Oh no, it needs to be, shit. 1RE, no, 1RE P. I'm trying to clear this one, MC. MC, 1 channel, Sunday, 0, no. These are a bit annoying to program. Channel 1, Sunday, 0046, on, set, clock, auto. So this should now click once we get to 0:46. Exciting. There we go. And now the remote will do nothing except light its own LED. If we turn this off, we can control it with a radio module, and we can still turn it on manually with a switch. Beautiful. So this is doing not quite what I wanted it to do, but it's doing, you know, good enough. Good enough. I can wire this up to work. I just need to invert the programming and use the normally closed connectors on the relay there, rather than the normally open ones I've been using thus far. So now we need to just glue the radio module in place again. I should get some fresh tape for that. Or let's just say the old tape is gonna be a champ and still work. Let's say that the old tape is gonna be a champ. It's not gonna be a champ. It's definitely not gonna be a champ. New tape it is. I really hope this will rip off easily. That went better than expected. More tape then. And we'll still double wield a bit of tape up top as well. Did I say double yield instead of dual wield? Oh well. I think that's going to be enough to keep it in place. Pick it as far down as we can possibly get it. Like so. And I think that's going to be there forever. Let's hope this actually still fits. Yes, no problem. No clearance issues with LEDs at all. Beautiful. I could loom all the wires up again, but I don't feel like it. That's just going to make things annoying, so we'll let all that stuff just be a mess. The clearances in this thing are so tight in some places that just having a zip tie around the wires causes some issues. So I think we're done here. I'm not going to show you how to program this thing because it's just not very logical and a chore, and most of the time you're just sitting being annoyed at these buttons reacting twice or 5 times or 20 times because they're soft buttons from the 1980s. Wizard Tim says, with 27 ohms you'll probably get 24 milliamps through the LED. I assume it's a 20 milliamp LED. No, I don't think that's how it's gonna work, and we can test that out. Because keep in mind, the resistor is not in series with the LED, it is in parallel with the LED. The LED is in series with a relay, that's the actual current limiting resistor. We're using the resistor to shunt current across the LED, but we can easily measure the voltage across the LED and calculate the current going through the resistor. I did just do like a back of the envelope calculation for that, so we have 1.83 volts across our 27 ohm resistor and our LED. 1.83 volts. We know we have about 90 milliamps in total, but I'll enter that into miscal. Let's get the monitor here. So we have 1.83 volts across a 27 ohm resistor. That means we have 67.7 milliamps across the through the resistor. Let's just put something there so we can fill the fields. No, hang on, that's not what we want. We want just a normal calculator. We want to do 90 minus 67.8. Oh yeah, that is a bit over 20 milliamps in the LED actually. You're absolutely right. It's on the high side, but meh, I think it's fine. If it burns out in a couple of years, it burns out. Oh well, I'll have to redo it. It's fine. But yes, you were right. Who was it? Wizard Tim. That was there's a fair bit of current through that LED. I think they're rated for a maximum of 30 milliamps, but with LEDs, generally for every time you have the current, you tend to double the lifetime. So it's not good for it to run at this high current. I'm quite aware, but meh. The old LEDs ran at 90 milliamps. Like, come on. I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. So That's just a question of bolting this all back together. And the clearance issues in this thing are a bit annoying. You really have no space at all to move. It's like squeezing the wires against the PCB. Where did the screws for this go? Where did the screws go? I have no idea, but you don't need to watch me search for them. I think we're going to call this a night, and I'm going to have to thank you guys for watching. Let's have a final quick look at the chat and then we'll go. Thor says, what I have noticed is the LED is brighter when turned on with a manual switch or clock than the radio control. I don't think so. So that's radio control. The switch should actually be brighter. The switch is brighter. The clock should not be brighter. Hey, the clock is brighter. That's curious. So the reason why it would be brighter with the switch than either the clock or the radio control is that the switch has no voltage drop. It's just a 0 ohm resistor. Whereas the clock, it has bipolar outputs. So there's like a 0.6-ish volts in those small transistors when they're on. And there's probably a FET in the radio control, which has a certain on resistance. So the reason it would be dimmer with the radio control is that the FET that's doing the switching in the radio control just has a much higher on resistance than the bipolar transistors in the clock or the switch, which still, it's just a switch, it's basically 0 ohms. That's a curious thing, you're absolutely right for. It is less bright with the radio control. But yeah, we'll call that a night. Cheerio.